ground control to Major Tom.
Space Oddity is one of those anomalies. Why was it a success? I think even to this day people throw their hands up and say, we're not quite sure.
Take your protein pills and put your helmet on.
I think Space Oddity worked really because it was different. It was David's first step really into the space strangeness.
I think the track gives the listener a feeling of space, of actually being out there. The lovely chords, the intro chord, which goes from an E minor to an F with the major seventh on the bass, in other words an F chord with the open E string of the guitar ringing through, sets the track up perfectly.
Interestingly, with Space Oddity, Bowie's producer, Tony Visconti, wanted nothing whatsoever to do with the song because he thought it was a bit of a cheap cash-in on the recent Apollo moon landings. So in stepped Gus Dudgeon, Elton John's producer, who gave Bowie his first hit.
Musically, what are the things you remember? Definitely the Stylophone, which was played by David Bowie. The Stylophone was a toy instrument, like a tiny keyboard that you played with a little rod with a cable on it. That was just a basic synthesizer, a cheesy little instrument. The mellotron, very important, played by Rick Wakeman. Terry Cox was the drummer. The bass player was the great session bass player Herbie Flowers, who played some wonderful lines. Interesting was the guitar performance, which was played by one Mick Wayne. So many people think that because the Space Oddity album was featured a credit to Mick Ronson, that it was him. In actual fact, it's very in the style of Mick Ronson, but it was played by Mick Wayne.
It was very dour. It was talking about a tragedy in space, which of course was to happen, nearly happened, not that long after it came out, and it caused a controversy because it was banned for a while, because it was too much like life. It had that opening that's very haunting and very singular, which reminds me always of the 1950s film Forbidden Planet, not in terms of what they're talking about lyrically, but in the music, very electronic, very haunting, very daunting.
I think as a drummer it was good for me because there was a lot of learning curves through that period. The songs weren't all like, say, Hendrix or Zeppelin or Sabbath, where you could have one sort of approach as a drummer, and you knew that would sort of work, and you just found in the beat, because it was piano and strings and lighter songs, heavier songs.
Bowie really understood the importance of presentation, and by coming together and working with Mick Rock, they really pioneered the art of the promotional video. Although the single was released in 1969, the promotional film wasn't actually shot till 1972, but with the technology that was available, it's a really great achievement.
The acoustic guitar plays a very big part, and there's one part where it breaks down to just it's a kind of bit of relief, a bit of nice light reliefs after all the kind of the bombardment of David Bowie's sort of dreamy vocal and very strange lyrics.
Well, Space Oddity remains, I think, to Joe Public, the favourite Bowie song. It was a big hit. It was written at a crucial time, at the height of the space race. And more importantly, I think David, like a lot of us, was deeply affected by the movie 2001 A Space Odyssey, from which he took the title Space Oddity. And in fact, the lyric is a story that actually draws the listener in. I think when you listen to that track, you don't realise how much you're being drawn in and become sympathetic to the plight of the spaceman.
This does not have a happy ending. And again, towards the end, when it opens up the acoustic guitar and the orchestration on the keyboard, it's beautifully balanced and beautifully put together. And of course now, and we're talking 35 years on, it still stands up as an all-time great piece of music. It doesn't sound at all dated. How do you improve upon it?
Hunky Dory wasn't actually the start of Bowie's career, but it was certainly when he arrived in the big time.
Although The Man Who Sold the World established Bowie as a credible artist, as a performer, whereas everything before was a little bit odd, eccentric and almost gimmicky, Hunky Dory was the album that most Bowie fans would now look back at and say, well, that was when we really started to identify with what he was doing. And that's when the chameleon aspect started to come through, because it did have such a diversity. And it was all locked together by Bowie's own personality and force of talent.
His first really significant album was The Man Who Sold the World, which had been released about 8 or 9 months before Hunky Dory. But Hunky Dory is undoubtedly Bowie's most important album. Changes is an absolutely perfect opener for the album. It's like a signpost for everything Bowie was going to do over the next few years and become the musical chameleon that he did.
Still don't know what I was waiting for. Time is running wild. A million dead-end streets. Every time I thought I'd got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet.
I think it's a fantastic opener. It's a great track, great piece of work. Very exciting, you know, very, very innovative.
How the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Changes. Changes. Didn't want to have to be hurt to man. Changes. Just wanted to be a better man. Time may change me. I can't trace time.
Played it through on the keyboards, and he said, well, you know, everybody in sort of from the beginning, so the bass comes in with the keyboards as he's changing these chords, and he's just doing the and then we go into the riff.
I watch the ripples change the size, but never leave the stream of warmth.
I can't think of anything better to sort of signal the way forward and let you know what was to come.
But still the days seem the same, just the same, quite the same. And these children.
A lot of musicians were kind of like very indignant, you know, kind of the sort of upstart type of guy that's sort of kind of wearing weird makeup. They would sort of say that they didn't like it because it was sort of kind of musically it wasn't that sophisticated. But you know, you hear it once and that's enough. You know that this is a major artist.
Bowie's all too often dismissed really as someone who doesn't have a great deal of the craft of music making. And I think that's very unfair. And if you've taken a song like Changes, it's a good example of just how on top of the technical aspects of making music that Bowie actually was. The whole song is basically in 4/4, but suddenly we have these 3 bars of a waltz time. It goes into 3/4 time for time may change me, I can't trace time. And it gives us this lovely shift in the song when we go back to the 4/4 for the rest of it. Very subtle, it's not ostentatious, but it's the kind of thing that Bowie could do and which fitted beautifully with the context of the song.
That particular thing was done on the keyboards. He wrote the riff, I mean, he played that on the piano. So that was all. And what we would do, I'd just follow the chords, you know, as I've just played you on the beginning. I just follow the verse chords, which is just doing root, fifth, and octave on a lot of it.
Changes was a very interesting song to open up the album. I think Bowie was making a lyrical statement. Changes. There's going to be changes in his life. There's going to be changes in the way he works.
It was Bowie's background as a mime artist and as an actor, having been trained in that quite a lot and picked up a lot of influences, as well as a musician, that basically told him, I'm going to open the album with something that's going to surprise everybody.
The opening riff from the F7th down to the D was great. I think people will be surprised to learn how much he influenced a lot of other people, because if you think of that riff that I've just referred to with the saxes, Bowie playing the saxes, it actually was very similar to some of the stuff that Roxy Music had done later on.
Up until that point, you'd had the Beatles doing incredible things sonically and I suppose intellectually within their songs, but Changes kind of just took you to another place that no one had ever been to before.
It also introduced the public to the wonderful string arrangements that Mick Ronson was capable of doing, those spiralling, cascading string riffs that became a trademark of Ronson's later on, and this was the first time we'd really heard them. So yeah, I think it was as much a statement of anything. Changes. It was a great album opener.
Behind the scenes, his costumes are professionally cleaned and pressed. During the act, he slips into something new 3 or 4 times at least. David's chosen today a neat little model with a fringe.
They are. Oh, it's all right.
Later, he selects a satin psychedelic leotard, and then he's off to the bedlam once more.
The image of the band and of this earth, while you're up there, I guess as an actor to some degree, you believed in the concept of the album or albums, and that seemed to communicate.
Well, I always think live's a lot better than the studio, you know. I mean, the studio is a bit sort of four walls and trying to create something to put on a record.
I mean, we used to get fan mail, lots of fan mail, you know, where people actually did believe that. So, no, Yorkshire, honest. Yeah, right. You know.
There's no point in sitting in the studio making great records and never playing them to an audience, because that is what a musician's all about. You have to get out there and play to an audience, whether it's 20 people or 20,000 people. It's the buzz of playing to them and sort of showing off in a way that this is what I can do and this is what I do, and you know, all that stuff.
In terms of stage show, it was riveting. You could not take your eyes off. What's going to happen next? What's he going to do next? You know, it wasn't just a sort of long-haired guy singing down the mic. It was sort of a really pretty strange-looking guy. You know, the makeup and the whole concept of Ziggy Stardust is like a sort of fairly out there kind of. You know, if you write down on paper, it looks mad and crazy, but works really well.
If you locked yourself in the studio and just wrote songs and the band just did studio work, I don't think it lasts very long. It would drive you mad.
The act itself is exciting. Unseen lighting men and sound mixers provide the stage effects. And then, of course, there's Bowie. Tantalizing, mocking, outrageous. In reality, he's more of a showman than a freak. Hollywood razzmatazz has come to the world of beat.
Well, I look on my watch, it's just 9:25, and I think, oh God, I'm still alive. Should be on by now.
The fans were, I mean, we spoke to a lot and kept in touch with a lot of them, and it seemed to open a door for them to create, to experiment with clothes and looks and how they their own creates. It made it sort of okay to do things, whereas they hadn't thought about it before. This was, I guess, so wild and odd that they probably thought, well, I've got odd ideas and I've always wanted to do that, but I didn't know. So that was good. That was a good aspect of it.
10 years ago, when the Beatles and Stones created scenes like this, the young saw them as rebels in an adult world. Bowie's appeal lies in rebellion too, only he must be more outrageous, for public tastes have changed. When he dresses up and plasters his face, the kids of today see it as his way of flaunting convention, and they respect him for it. It's worth wondering, though, what the beat age will spawn next, when someone like David Bowie isn't even freakish enough to shock us anymore.
I seem to draw a lot of fantasies out of people, and a lot of the fan mail I get. A lot of it is awfully nice. I mean, they say, how's your baby, and how's your wife, and what's your mum's name, and things like that. But some of them are worth framing.
We're in San Francisco, and we'd just come off stage, and we had like jeans and t-shirts on, just chilling out. And 3 guys bulled up, and they had roller skates on, dresses, beards, full makeup, earrings, the works, and they just stood in front of Mick, Trevor and I, and one guy just went, "Gee man, you're really weird." And we went, "What?" You know, it was like unbelievable, and they actually saw that we were weird, you know, and we looked at them and went, "You're joking, man," you know.
Most of the reasons that I do what I do is because I just like startling people. Startling? Yeah, something to do. England has a marvellous habit of being able to dissipate everything through this marvellous media. Long hair quickly got dissipated. I mean, I used to be able to stop traffic quite easily by just walking down the street, you know, no more than that, just because I had long hair. I'm a real trooper, you know. This is my life, really, you know, writing or performing. There's not much else I want. It's the biggest kick I know. I know all the drugs, and, you know, you get a different kind of buzz off those, but stage is just something else. It's partaking of people. I'm very much a character when I go on stage, I feel. I mean, I
Like an actor?
Yeah, I believe in my part all the way down the line, right the way down. But I do play it for all it's worth, because that's the way I do my stage thing. That's part of what Bowie's supposedly all about. I'm an actor.
We toured America with Ziggy. The first American tour, we went out there for 3 months, and we did, I think it was 12 concerts in 3 months. We started off playing in a little place in Boston to, I think it was 200 people. And I always remember Tony DeFries saying, when we come back, there was a big hall next door that held 10,000 people, and we were playing in this small one that held 500. He says, we'll play that hall at the end of this tour, we'll play in that hall. And we did, we came back and did 2 nights sold out, 20,000 people.
Wake up, you sleepyhead. Put on some clothes, get out of bed. Put another log on the fire for me. I made some breakfast.
Oh You Pretty Things is an amazing track. It's a real kind of melancholy mix of melodies, strange stop-start time signatures, and these amazing lyrics that allude to cracks in the sky, which is actually Bowie talking about his split personality.
What are we coming to? No room for me, no fun for you.
An interesting song, very, very commercial. Shows how Bowie was capable of making some quite intricate chord changes, and you weren't always aware of them. It starts going from F to G, and then sneakily works its way up to the verse, which is in F sharp, which is an unusual key. and some wonderful chord changes where he says you're driving your mamas and papas insane, and it goes up to that strong seventh, the B7. Very, very effective.
Oh You Pretty Things is one of those songs that you look back at now and you realise, of course, it was very ambivalent, very bisexual, even homosexual in the way that it worked. And the era it came out in, of course, people were opening up their whole horizon to accepting anything. Sexual experimentation was regarded as part of the era. People talk about the permissiveness of the 60s, but it was a very straight-laced permissiveness to some extent, at least as far as the public was concerned.
I think from the drums it was just a simple beat that that didn't really let up, even though it was a commercial type song. It was this, and there was I remember there's an odd little fill on the hi-hat and snare where it's like dum-bat, bat, dum-bat, bat, boom, bat, dum bat, dum-bat, bat, which I hadn't heard before, but it just seemed to really lift it at the right point.
If you look at the old grey whistle test footage of Pretty Things, you can see that Bowie definitely misses Rick Wakeman, because he may be many things, but he's certainly not a pianist. This is a very difficult performance for him, and you can see he's just hanging on by his fingernails, but he gets there in the end.
Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your mamas and papas insane? Let me say it again, you gotta make way for the homo superior.
The 70s came along and ambivalence was very much the order of the day. And here was a song, Oh You Pretty Things, which had a great chorus, had a great drive to it and a great rhythm, but was actually talking about something that was very decadent, very much related to the Berlin of the 1930s, one of Bowie's influences, and was getting picked up and acknowledged by people who weren't quite sure and quite aware what Bowie was saying, but he was challenging the norm lyrically, while also leading people in with a very straight-laced and basic melody that stuck very much to tradition.
It's a pretty basic thing, really, you know. He's playing gong, 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 gong. He's playing nearly the same on the keyboard. Dong, gong, gong, gong. You know, it's that sort of thing. So you don't really need to put a lot in it, you know. It's just that. And that's all there is in that song.
Split personality, schizophrenia, mental illness is a theme Bowie revisits again and again throughout his career. He's had various brushes with mental illness in his family over the years. So it's something that really has affected him and has really affected his work and his lyrics as well.
It's a god-awful small affair to the girl with the mousy hair, but her mummy is yelling no.
Life on Mars was definitely one of the best tracks he's ever done.
Now she walks through her sunken dream to the seat with the
Life on Mars is one of the all-time great songs, not just an all-time great Bowie song, but an all-time great song, full stop.
The song starts quite simply, almost like an Elton John song in F, with just quite an easy, it lulls the listener into it, and then all of a sudden you get this powerful chromatic run on the cellos, the guitar, and the bottom end of the piano from an E flat to an E natural up to an F, and then it develops into that wonderful chorus in B flat. Which features the fantastic cascading strings that Mick Ronson was capable of writing.
Life on Mars is one of the most haunting, heartbreaking, stirring melodies Bowie ever wrote. It's one of his best love songs, and it still sounds amazing today.
It's a song that's very gentle in a way and very sarcastic in another way. And it's talking not really about science fiction, it's talking about life at that point on Earth and how people get carried away into these high-flying concepts and lose track of where they are in their own lives.
It's just a fantastic song. And there's an interesting little thing that always appeals to me, is there's a line in there that alludes to, I believe, the time when America put a ban on selling Beatles records because John Lennon had offended them. He said, they're selling Lennon's on sale again now. I think that was probably just a nice little aside that he put in there, just a good touch that appeals to me.
It's a wonderfully put together song, and it's very laid back but very sharp at the same time. And it's very difficult with Bowie because he's gone through so many changes, if you want, over a period of years to actually say that anything is a highlight of his career. But Life on Mars is one of his great songs.
Life on Mars was another film which was made in a very short period of time with Mick Rock. You can see Rock's background as a stills photographer coming through, because we've got this white out background where even the face is kind of overexposed to create this very alien and strange image. We're not working here with a great deal of resources. It's really just Bowie in the background, but you can see the craft and the thought that's gone into the film, how well they can achieve the effect using very little other than the artist's facial imagery and some very stylish direction. It still holds up today, 30 years after it was made. It's an excellent piece of work.
She's lived it 10 times or more. She could spit in the eyes of fools if they ask her to focus on sailors fighting in the dance hall. Oh man, look at those cavemen go. It's the freakiest show. Take a look at the long man beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know who's in the best-selling show. Is their life on Mars?
It was, I mean, it's the basic Bowie, as he was writing in those days, keyboard rundown, you know. And he wrote a lot of songs with the bass lines running down, and then you go down, then you get the, which the string part comes in there. Which is what the strings play, which is what I played, and they added the strings in over the top later on to play that.
I think listening to it, you're thinking imagination-wise. It puts you into another world altogether, and the perfect fusion of classical and rock just works.
Again, it can't be stressed too much the importance of the band. The Spiders were an excellent band for what Bowie was doing in that sort of, that period.
It's a product of the band again, you know. I mean, it was a basic song that was played to us, and I added the bass lines, and then Ronson wrote the string parts, and he used some of the bass lines to go with the string parts. And then Rick came along and did all the keyboards over the top and stuff. So it was, to make the song sound like that, it was a band thing, definitely. But David wrote the song.
He wrote it at the height of Ziggy Mania, when just his whole world was turning upside down. And yet he was talking about, he was making this beautiful music, whereas in fact he was doing a lot of naughty things at that point.
Oh, I think it's a great song. I always remember him coming in the studio and he'd just written that lyric, the line, Mickey Mouse has grown up a cow. And he comes steaming into the control room and he said, oh, listen to this, Mickey Mouse has grown up a cow, because we all just started laughing. Until you hear it in the song, I mean, it's all imagery stuff, and it was brilliant in the song. But when somebody first says it, it's like, what? Yeah.
Up until that point, drugs hadn't really been a big part of his life, but from the Ziggy period onwards, drugs were a big part of Bowie's life. And you can kind of hear this as if you actually listen to the songs on a deeper level, you can hear he's certainly got, how should we put it, the doors of perception have been opened within his mind.
Mick's arrangement on it is outstanding. He worked with me on some of the parts, on some of the drum parts on that, just because the strings were going to be doing these staccato parts, so the drums would have to follow, otherwise there'd be a conflict at certain parts in the arrangement.
And the final resolve to me is the classic guitar solo, one of the greatest guitar solos that's ever been heard on a pop song. We hear that twice, and then the track settles down at the end with a lovely timp roll. Great drumming all the way through, as there always was on Bowie's tracks.
Rick Wakeman played keyboards on the album. He just blew us away with his technique. We hadn't really seen a pianist play like that. And he was able to put so much technique in without it being, you know, it wasn't just technique, it was feel.
Considering how strongly Rick Wakeman's piano is featured in the whole album, one would have to say that it's very, very important. One could argue, of course, that Bowie's songs were strong enough anyway, but the piano, the underlying piano parts were very, very important.
He was originally going to be one of the Spiders. Bowie had asked him to join the band, and I think he would have been great. I think he would have fitted in perfectly, but unfortunately Yes came along with a lot of money. And he went off with Yes.
Rick Wakeman's piano playing is one of the key sonic elements of Hunky Dory. He plays in this kind of unique style. He's never over histrionic, which is interesting considering what he went on to do, which was to be a founding member of Yes, one of the most over-the-top histrionic bands in the history of rock and roll.
He'd sit down and Bowie, if it was the piano, he'd sit down and play the piano, and Rick would just maybe sit at the other end and learn the chords, and then, of course, Rick could then elaborate on it amazingly, a lot more than David was playing, you know, and be like free to do what he wanted.
Rick Wakeman was someone whom Bowie had worked with earlier on. He's on Space Oddity, for instance. He came into the Bowie era and Hunky Dory with a tremendous flurry and flourish of piano playing. It was very much cabaret, music hall. It was not rock and roll. It was certainly not the prog rock for which Wakeman was to become known with Yes. He's known these days as the prog rock king. But it was very flamboyant, and he actually accentuated a lot of what Bowie was doing.
Rick Wakeman has a very individual style, semi-classical style of playing piano.
He had the nous and the understanding to say, right, what I need to do is play piano in this style. I need to actually bring in something that opens up the song. And a lot of the songs on that album, Wakeman opens up. And it's because of the way he plays. And it's fantastic flourishes on the record. You can't actually imagine anybody else coming in and doing something similar, except maybe Elton John at that time.
He really gave it a classical pianist's approach, and brilliant playing. It was just, when he did the piano runs, it was just awesome. We were just like mouths open.
Ronson's guitar actually took a bit of a back seat to the piano parts. But yeah, Life on Mars, absolutely unbelievable. The 8-line poem, absolutely unbelievable. Very important piano parts, and I think he didn't get the credit that he deserves from the media for just how important he was to that album.
He was inspiring to watch play keyboards. I mean, he's just, to me, he always has been one of the greatest keyboard players around. and in his style and everything, the way he plays.
He had everything: feel, technique, and good fun. You know, he had the technique of a classical pianist without being stuffy. He was able to be part of the unit, you know, while he was playing with us, which was good. Funny guy as well.
Queen Bitch is one of Bowie's most exciting, exhilarating, sexy songs. He notes on the album, "Some VU white light returned with thanks." This is a tribute to the Velvet Underground, and it is the most exciting couple of minutes. It's just exhilarating.
Can't see her letting him go. Walk out of her heart, walk out of her mind. No, she's so swissy in her satin and tie, in her frock coat and bibbidi bobbidi hat. Oh, but I could do better than that.
Queen Bitch, why does it work in musical terms? Well, to put it quite simply, it's simple. It's just a basic guitar track in C. In fact, I don't think there are any keyboards on it. It's just those strong guitars all the way through.
Queen Bitch is a virile, vicious song that still stands out as one of Bowie's best today. Incredible.
It's an open homage to Velvet Underground. I think I read somewhere Bowie did acknowledge that he wrote this song as a tribute to Velvet Underground, and it's like a precursor to Suffragette City later on.
That song actually was given to the band by Bowie about 6 months before I ever met Bowie. He sent a song out because Mick had rung him up and said, well, because the band was doing an album for Polydor and we needed a single, and Bowie sent that song down, and we actually learnt that song 6 months before we ever played it on Hunky Dory, and we used to have it in the set.
Mick and I went back to the north of England and put another band together, and we were out playing the northern clubs and like Liverpool Cavern and places like that.
It just works. It's the punky, riffy guitar, and I think that in the middle of a lot of the complicated stuff that Bowie had done, with the complicated keyboards and interesting, strange discords, this works so well because it is a punky, basic guitar song.
The atmosphere we were going for was like an English musical Velvet Underground approach. It wasn't sort of all hell let loose. It was a streamlined approach to it, but we still wanted to get that same atmosphere that you were in New York City and part of the happening scene and the whole thing, and I think we did.
If you talk to a lot of modern young guitar players, they're actually quite influenced by it. It's had a profound effect on some of the new genre of guitar bands that are around. And in fact, probably if you re-released it, it'd be a hit all over again, because it's surprising how much is owed by some of the newer guitar bands to that particular track.
The Old Grey Whistle Test performance of Queen Bitch is an excellent example of how well the band could work in its kind of stripped down capacity. You've only got acoustic guitar and electric guitar, but as usual, Trevor Bolder really holds it together well, and Woodmansey's drumming is as usual, very out of the top drawer.
Hunky Dory is such an odd album because it's out of time and out of sync. If you actually look at the early Bowie albums, by the time he got to The Man Who Sold the World, he'd really gone into his stride with a heavy sound. And then he took a complete directional change with Hunky Dory, which in a way should have come before The Man Who Sold the World, because The Man Who Sold the World led on to Ziggy Stardust. Hunky Dory has such a diversity of style. It's got the musical element in there, it's got the acoustic element in there, as well as the heavy stuff.
Well, I'd done Man Who Sold the World album before that, with Mick and Tony Visconti on bass. So for us, that was the start, really. That was the start of, I guess, really getting used to Bowie's writing, and some of the strange chord sequences and time signatures. Just getting familiar with how he wrote. It wasn't what you normally expected.
By the time Hunky Dory came along, that was the album that set him up. It put him on a roll, and I think that was the one that people genuinely think of as being the start of his career.
So I didn't want the drums just to be a rock and roll bash behind a symphony orchestra. So I had to think with the arrangement and work out how can I emphasize it rock-wise and classical-wise. So it would be, rather than doing a drum fill of da 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 on tom-toms, I'd do it on hi-hats and snare, which I hadn't heard anybody do that. So, but you had to get it really tight and make it heavy at the same time. So it was ba 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 bush, like that. So it was little differences like that.
You had 3 classic tracks on there: Changes, Oh You Pretty Things, and Life on Mars. And those 3 alone justify the title classic when you refer to the Hunky Dory album. So yeah, I guess you would say that Hunky Dory probably was the one that really put him on the international map.
Hey, no, no. Didn't know what time it was and the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some get it on rock and roll, he said. Then the loud sound, it seemed to fade. Came back like a slow voice on a wave of phase. That one, no DJ.
Bowie is keen on writing in the key of F. I think it's a lot of writers who are basic guitar players find a key that suits them, and it suits his voice.
It's a perfect intro, really, the guitar, because it's nice sounding, but it's really not what you want. It's like it impinges on you because it's, come on, get on with it.
Starman is one of Bowie's great songs. Again, it's one of those soaring, wonderful songs that builds so beautifully. And because it builds from an acoustic intro that's very laid back and understated, what happens at the end, it makes more impact.
The intro fill I still like playing it. It's sort of a flam on 2 toms onto a snare, and it's just not something you would normally do. I've not heard anybody else do it, and it just really kicks in nice.
The intro of Starman can be quite disturbing to a trained musician's ear. He was fond of just leaving strings ringing open, and it starts with a B-flat chord played on the acoustic guitar at the first position, with the E and the A strings gaily ringing open, and he doesn't seem to give a monkeys about that. And then it goes back to an F chord with the bottom E string ringing open, as it did on Space Oddity.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. And there's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children use it, let the children use it, let all the children boogie.
He'd been to the States and he'd got involved with Lou Reed, and he'd watched a few of the American bands. Iggy Pop was a big influence, and I think what he tried to create was an American type of sound, but with a British band.
The effect is a sort of a disturbing discord that often a lot of contemporary musicians would not go for that sort of thing. And I think that's where there is a huge appeal in a lot of Bowie's writing, that he didn't do what was conventional. It certainly is an unconventional intro, so that when it actually goes into the song, which is very, very normal in actual fact, and you think of the chorus is almost twee. I think the intro is a great foil to the basic simplicity of the chorus.
The impact's there anyway. But Bowie was great at building things. It's almost like he had a cinematic vision sometimes as a song. It's the old thing about build to a climax. And Bowie understood this. It was basically taking you through an episode of a story or a storyline. It's no good coming in and saying, here's the whole story, because that's it, you won't go any further. So he builds it. He keeps you on tenterhooks. Where's it going to go? How's it going to develop? And because Starman also has such a wonderful epic feel to it, by the time it reaches its climax, its crescendo, you're thoroughly involved with it. And it's wonderfully clever the way that he could do something like that. And if you think about the other bands at the time, he was doing something similar maybe to a Led Zeppelin on the one hand and a Velvet Underground on the other, but he was telling a story through music, through notes, and he understood how you tell a story.
Mick Ronson was a genius guitarist, very underrated. Everyone these days talks about Jimmy Page or, well, I mean, so many people. Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, all these kind of classic guitar heroes. People don't talk about Mick Ronson in the same breath, and I'd say he was at least as influential as all of those.
Mick Ronson was a fantastic guitarist. He wasn't just a trash rock guitarist, which he was known for because he inspired so many trash rock musicians over the years. He was very delicate when he needed to be, very fluent, very fluid. He made the guitar speak.
Mick Ronson, I rate very, very highly as a guitarist. In fact, I'd say he's one of the most underrated guitarists when people talk of rock music and guitarists within that field.
There's no doubt about it that Mick Ronson was a superb arranger and a very, very good guitarist indeed. Obviously, he's not in the class of somebody, say, of Ritchie Blackmore, who's a unique talent, but as a guitarist, he certainly was able to deliver everything that the music required. But I think his real contribution were in these superb arrangements that he brought to Bowie's compositions.
I think it was a great loss to the rock music world, Mick Ronson's passing. He was the consummate ensemble player. He was great in a band, he could be a great soloist, and he also proved that you don't have to play at 500 miles an hour to be effective.
Mick Ronson is a very underrated musician. It's only because the record didn't say David Bowie and Mick Ronson that he didn't become as big a star as any of those guitar players. Or not so much a star, but in terms of someone that was talked about then and now as an incredible rock and roll guitar player. As a creative foil, he was incredible for Bowie. He did Bowie the world of good, and they looked so cool together.
And he could cut it live. I saw this with my own eyes, how good he was live. And if anyone has the Ziggy motion picture album, when he plays his extended solo towards the end of the DVD, it's absolutely riveting.
Again, although he's always praised and hailed, I think a lot of what he did is lost because he's known for one particular style, and of course he went on to work with Ian Hunter as well. I've always felt if Mick Ronson was allowed to in the studio, sadly it never happened now, was allowed to run free and actually bring out all the elements that made him such a talent, he would come up with an album that would surprise a lot of people. Only that could have happened at some point, but he's always known as being the trash rock god, and that's not a bad thing to be, actually, when you look at the musicians he's inspired over the years, from Hanoi Rocks to Guns N' Roses.
The guy was great, and I think it was a huge loss at the time of Bowie's career when they parted company, because I think he was so important.
The only other guy that I think he was very similar to was Mark Bolan. And again, they were, David Bowie, Mick Ronson and Mark Bolan were all friends. So I think that probably Bolan and Ronson probably were experimenting together with different amps, different guitars. But in particular, when you think of tracks like Rebel Rebel, Genie, there's some wonderful guitar playing, and it's quite subliminal. It's not as flashy as, say, Jimmy Page, who was an extrovert and really, he liked you to know all about it. Mick Ronson was much more understated. So, and actually, but Mick Ronson, what I like about his playing the most is that he was providing hooks in most David Bowie songs of that period. His guitar parts were, he'd always come up with a little hook that would become integral to the song, and without that hook, maybe the song wouldn't have really been so successful. So that's what I like the most about his playing.
I think John I'm Only Dancing was recorded while we were in the middle of an American tour. So it was, I think it was done in RCA Studios in New York.
John I'm Only Dancing was again one of those strange songs that was very homoerotic in the way the tone and it presented itself.
It was a strange song that didn't really follow the normal patterns of rock songs, I guess. It had little twisty bits in it. We were never common.
The essence of the song is the wonderfully inventive bass playing from Trevor Bolder, which is very upbeat and gives the song its life. On the introduction is where you can hear it particularly clearly. It's a wonderful creation.
This is the line from the middle of John I'm Only Dancing, which is a lot of people like, a lot of bass players think it's a very good bass line.
That was the first time I think I'd ever overdubbed drums. So I played a really straight, heavy rock beat, and then the tom fills, I overdubbed them all just to get as much power that I could possibly get into the toms. It was like, forget about the feet, forget about anything else, just hit those toms as hard as you can possibly hit them. And it worked.
Of course, the record was accompanied by the Mick Rock film, which arguably was the first, if not one of the first, known pop promos.
It was shot in about half a day. Was it? Yeah, the whole thing. I mean, it was very low-key equipment-wise. It was just shot, basically, you know. But it did have a good feel about it, which is what communicated, you know.
John I'm Only Dancing is another wonderful promotional film from Mick Rock. It was shot during rehearsals at the Rainbow Theatre for a stage performance. And again, using very little other than some well thought out and well art directed footage, it produces a promotional film that certainly holds its head up against anything that's being done today.
The screaming guitar in the chorus obviously is very, very characteristic, and the great guitar part at the end with the Pete Townsend trick with the on-off switch on the guitar is absolutely great.
On the surface, the circus seems bizarre. Yet his backing group are professional musicians. They're Yorkshire lads with down-to-earth accents whose appearance merely seems to be moulded to fit into the Bowie image.
Well, the lovely Trevor Bolder, him of the long sideboards that go down nearly as long as his legs, I don't think you can possibly overestimate how important he was to the early albums of Bowie.
Trevor Bolder was a bassist who understood where he should be. He was aggressive, he was heavy, but he fitted in well with the Spiders from Mars because it was quite a heavy band. And Trevor's always had this ability to slide into situations and enhance music without overdoing it. He's not elaborate, although I'm sure he's more than capable of being elaborate.
Long before I knew the man, his bass playing had made a great impact on me. You listen to songs like John, I'm Only Dancing, which I've already mentioned. To me, the hook is the bass part in the chorus. 5 years, fantastic bass playing. Moon Age Daydream, absolutely a tremendous bass player.
He was like the musical glue in the band, so he basically held everything together. When Ronson would be sort of going off on a very big solo, and there might be sort of Woody would be sort of playing sort of lots of drum fills and busy parts. It'd be Bolder who would be sort of holding everything down. He was like the kind of the rock, the anchor within the band.
A great riff player. The playing on the song Ziggy Stardust is absolutely fantastic. He had character and humour. He was a melodic bass player, and I would place him equally alongside Andy Fraser as the two great British melodic rock bass players of all time.
He was a very firm, very sharp, very focused bassist to lock the sound down, and when necessary could go with the flights of fantasy and fancy. And of course he also played trumpet, which didn't do him any harm at all with Bowie.
In addition to his great bass playing, of course, were his frequent interludes on trumpet. I think on Kooks, one can't really forget the wonderful Herb Alpert style trumpet that he plays. I think he's solid as a rock.
Trevor Bolder's sideburns were ludicrous, frankly ridiculous, but he's never been a man of great image. It has to be said, he never had glamour. He comes from Hull, what can you say?
In later years, I've had the pleasure of working with Trevor with Uriah Heep, and that same quirkiness, that same attention to melodic detail. He would never just play, he will play bone simply if need be, but he will always think of a great riff, of something that's, yeah, that'll do, but this is better. He will always strive to find something that's totally original and totally him.
Yeah, and the road up.
He and Woody Woodmansey formed one of the best rhythm sections in the whole history of rock. They're underrated because everyone remembers Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars for Mick Ronson, rightly for Mick Ronson, and also obviously for Bowie.
Woody, like Trevor, is one of the great underrated British rock musicians. A great drummer who could cope quite easily with all the intricate time signature and tempo changes that strongly featured in all of Bowie's material.
Woody Woodmansey is one of the greatest drummers of all time. I've never understood why he's never got the credit, but that may well be because he was with Bowie in the Spiders from Mars and he was seen as a sideman. He deserves more credit than he gets, and I've always felt it's a little unfair that people don't realise his dexterity, his power, his drive actually played such an important part in the whole Spiders from Mars sound.
And yet he could be so simple. You'd listen to him and you would think, well, this is not a jazz player along the lines of a Bill Bruford or something, yet he was quite capable of handling any of that style of music. And he made some great performances. 5 years was a fantastic accomplishment for him. Life on Mars, again, was absolutely great. He could be absolutely rock solid, and he would swing like the best of them.
He went on to do Woody Woodmansey's U-Boat, which is a really good band in its own right. But somehow he's always got locked into the Spiders from Mars era, and I'm sure he's still working these days as a session musician and doing very well for himself.
What I like about his drumming is that he always played what was right for the song, you know, and there's a real difference. You often get a great drummer, and because he spent years and years learning his trade, he plays all through the song and just playing too much or doesn't play the right part for the right chorus. What's great about Woody's drumming is that the choruses are all almost too empty drum-wise, but that's part of the sound of that band. And again, combined with Boulder and Ronson, the perfect drummer for the band. Not a great technician by any means, but the right drummer for David Bowie's band at the time.
You listen to the drum sound in those early days, and it was far more focused and far heavier than a lot of other bands were doing. He's not quite John Bonham, but he's probably a lot more powerful than other drummers who were being raved about as the heaviest drummers around and the best drummers around. So thoroughly underrated is the best way to sum him up.
Genie snuck off to the city, strung out on lasers and slashback blazers, and ate all your razors while pulling the waiters, talking about Monroe and walking on Snow White. New York's a go-go and everything tastes nice.
Genie is a great single. You can't argue with that. The chugging open, it's got that sort of feeling of a great pop rock single. It's short, sharp, it's got the focus, it's got the elements there, it's rock and roll, it's rhythmic, it's pop as well because it's got the melody.
Was it his best single? I've had this debate with quite a few people. With so much good material under his belt, it's very hard to say whether it was his best single. It's certainly powerful. The great guitar riff of Mick Ronson, powerful as anything.
Genie was, the song was David wrote on the back of a Greyhound bus on the way to Memphis, Tennessee from New York. And originally the guy that did the paintings on the album covers, Hunky Dory and Ziggy, George Underwood, was sat at the back of the bus with Bowie's Les Paul, and he was playing that riff and a few Chuck Berry songs he was messing about with, and David happened to cotton on to. So when George put the guitar down, David picked it up and started playing the same thing, same chord riff. And he sat in the back of the bus for about an hour and a half, just messing about and singing. They were all at the back of the bus.
That again was I guess a tried and tested playing with your roots. I mean, we'd come up through rhythm and blues, and that's very much a sort of a Howlin' Wolf type track, you know, the dang, 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 and we just approached it like that.
And 3 days later, we went back to New York, and we went in the studios in New York, and he played as Genie, and he played the whole song to us, and then he said, we'll do a run through. So we did a run through. But I always remember that the Adbeds had a song called I'm a Man, which was by some old blues singer, I don't know if Howlin' Wolf or somebody, that they'd done. And it was exactly the same riff. Da, 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 da. So I always remember Paul Samuel Smith did a run on the beginning of that, and it went da 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 da. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll elaborate on that and I'll nick it off him. So I stole it in a way, and instead of doing the single rundown, I did.
Get back on it. Genie lives on his back. The Genie loves chimney stacks. His outrageous, he screams and he falls. The Genie, let yourself go.
We understood that music, but David's lyrics and vocal approach to it was completely off the wall, really, for that time. But the two fitted together. It was like it shouldn't really have fitted. And then Mick's guitar solo in it was not what you expected in a track like that. It's still one of my favourites. Every time I hear it on the radio, it's like, yeah, I like that. It's good.
I actually would humbly suggest that I think he's made some more powerful vocal performances. I think it was a good performance, but not an outstanding vocal performance. But a driving track, interesting song.
The drumming on Genie was just all it needed was what that kind of music was known for. Just that simple rocking out 4/4 approach to it, and with just a little slight variation on the chorus so that it lifted, so it went into a normal rock chorus and then back to the rhythm and blues for the verses.
You can't put it into context in terms of, is this the greatest thing Bowie ever did singles-wise, because Bowie's had such a diverse career. Its impact is unquestioned, and I think if you had a poll among Bowie fans, that would certainly appear in the top 10, probably the top 5 songs that he did. Personally, it's one of my favourites, but if you're looking at it objectively, Bowie's had so many different careers, and so many songs have made an equal impact over the time. All you can say is this is as good as most of what Bowie's done.
It was more feel than anything, is I think why it works. You know, when we learnt how to play blues in the 60s, if you were going to get work as a rhythm and blues band, you really had to be able to play the blues, and you had to feel it. You had to really believe in the blues to pull it off.
It almost sounds like it started out as a Rolling Stones pastiche, but of course Bowie being Bowie, he's never going to come out sounding like anyone really apart from himself. But I think if it, in anyone else's hands, that song definitely would have sounded like a sort of dodgy attempt to be the Rolling Stones. But with Bowie, it just sounds like Bowie.
I think that groundwork in rhythm and blues helped you to be able to get the emotion out of a song, or figure out what the emotion should be for a song, even though it wasn't a rhythm and blues song. You learned that, well, there's got to be some emotional content here, there's got to be some meaning and message that you're trying to put across. It's got to integrate with what the basic, I guess, the purpose of the writer was, and you have to be able to duplicate that, and the blues helped us get inside the song and be that song, and Genie was just a good example of that.
It was a good song. We all knew it was a good song. I mean, we had a quick run through of it, and we all knew it was like "I'm a Man" by the Yardbirds. We'd all played that before many times as kids. And then we had one go at it, and we didn't keep that take. And then we had one more go at it, and that was the take we kept. Which, if you listen to on the record, is where I actually make the bass mistake that's so famous that everybody points out to me, where I go down to the B too early. But it fits, so we keep it. And I still today, if I play that song, I still play that mistake, because everybody says, you've got to play that mistake, you know, you've got to play that mistake. So it was kept, it was done in one go, and everything was kept, the guitar solo, and I remember we started, I think it was 11 o'clock, about 12 o'clock it was all finished and mixed. And a week later it was number 2 in the charts in England. It was the fastest single ever recorded, I think.
I'm not sure if it's his best single. I mean, I personally, I think I prefer Changes as a single, but Genie, it's just, you know, there's no surprise, no mystery about it. You know, from the very first few bars, it's going to rock, and it's kind of got lots of elements. It's got pop in it, it's got rock in it. It's absurdly commercial. You know, first time you hear it, you think, oh, that's. You almost think you've heard it before. I remember clearly thinking, oh, I've heard this before somewhere. It's not. I've scoured my memory banks. It's not some other artist that's sort of done it. It's just got that very familiar thing.
I've done it in about an hour and a half at the most, I should think. Yeah, it was just go in, set up, play the song, get the sound really quickly, run through it once, do it again. That's the one we're going to keep it. Bowie went out there. He played a bit of harmonica, did the vocals, did the backing vocals, played a bit of tambourine, and that was it. Done. And then it was sent over to England that same day. The track was sent to England, and the next, I think it was, we did it on like a Wednesday or something. I think they had it out on the Monday. The Rush released it on the Monday, and it was in the charts the following week. And we couldn't believe it, you know.